When two humans get together to to swap genetic material, they use sperm and eggs. Those cells mix and they create a zygote, and it travels down the fallopian tubes and eventually becomes a morula and then a blastocyst and then an embryo. But what happens if you just, skip the sperm and egg part? What if you just took stem cells from your arm and you mix them up and made a whatever? That's what researchers just did. Yeah, introducing synthetic embryos. Everyone has that friend who doesn't eat meat, or didn't until, say, Impossible and Beyond Meat hit the shelves, right? They were vegan or vegetarian, and it was for moral or ethical reasons. The animals were being treated badly. The revolution in food from those products is sort of what's happening in the world of embryonic research right now. I know, it's a weird analogy, but bear with me, okay? Synthetic embryos could completely change this entire field of research, and I am not seeing anyone talking about it. They're tiny, but this is huge. Stem cell research is a multi-billion-dollar-a-year industry. Embryonic stem cells is a big part of that, and it gets a lot of press, because everyone is birthed. Hey, I was cloned, okay? Okay, yes, but you're a fictional storytelling function, so go back to playing Zelda. Happily. The depths are calling me anyway. Synthetic embryos look and behave like real embryos, but there was never a sperm or egg involved. And in fact, the researchers don't eat them. Instead, they take a set of pluripotent stem cells and they modify them to be more like embryonic stem cells. They bathe them in chemicals which turn on specific genes, and they wait for them to turn into a few different cells. Cells for the embryo, for the placenta, and epithelial cells, which are like surface coverings. Finally, they mix them for a few days and let them do their thing, and voila, they naturally form and organize into embryos, yolk sacs, and placentae. This is a huge, huge deal. Right now, most embryonic stem cells come from in vitro fertilization. They're discarded or donated to research. That has ethical issues. Meanwhile, pluripotent stem cells, they can come from any tissue. I mean, when you scrape the inside of your mouth, you can get them from skin, you can get them from blood, and that means that these cells can be made entirely in a lab. And researchers may not have to worry about ethical considerations surrounding the embryonic version because they aren't really that. The ethics are a big deal here. To go back to the food thing, imagine a world where everyone was vegan. There's a vegan council and vegan bosses and vegan Supreme Court. Everyone is vegan and all the rules and religions are vegan, so burgers were illegal to study. Then someone invented a plant-based burger. It looks like a meat burger and it smells like one and it tastes like one and it behaves like one. Would that not change everything? Because now all of a sudden, we can look at these burgers and we can study them and we can understand them because they're not really burgers. They just behave like them. Again, the analogy's weird, but that's how big a deal this is. And maybe you're not an embryonic person, right? You're already fully grown, you're not gonna birth anyone, so why should you care? Because early embryonic development in humans is a bit of a black box. Thanks to the restrictions on research, real embryos are typically destroyed after 14 days. And the only way to study embryos after that is to go and find a pregnant person. And that isn't an embryo anymore. At that point, it's growing into a fetus. Most people don't even know they're pregnant until several weeks into a pregnancy. And when hours and days matter, like in cell division, 2 weeks to 6 or 7, that's a big gap. So we actually know more about mouse embryos than we do about human ones. The 14-day limit exists for reasons. This is controversial science, and that's why synthetic embryos might be the answer. Synthetic embryos literally are not real embryos. They don't actually work as embryos. They can't be implanted into people, and implants that were attempted in monkeys and mice, they didn't work anyway. Synthetics are only 95% similar to the real type, and researchers are saying that that is different enough that they shouldn't even be considered regular embryos and regulated as such. For example, in the United States, researchers now cannot get public grants to study human embryos. But for a synthetic one, Maybe they could. Of course, the ethics aren't universal. In China, new ethics guidelines were just announced because 5 years ago, get this, a scientist genetically modified a zygote with a gene editor called CRISPR-Cas9 to make the future resultant humans who were birthed after he implanted it into a person. Those twins are resistant to HIV, allegedly. The scientist is now in jail because that was totally unethical. They didn't get to consent. But the twins born from this are real humans who just exist in the world now. Stepping back, would this be a thing with synthetic embryos? No, because they're not real embryos. No one is suggesting that this research exists to grow synthetic humans. It's just a tool. So why do scientists say we should do this? Miscarriages, genetic disorders, and filling a knowledge gap. Up to 26% of all pregnancies end in miscarriage. That's more than 1 in 4. That's a lot. Researchers believe that understanding this period of human development will help us know why that is. Because right now, again, it's a black box. We either can't research it or we don't know how to look for it, and these embryo models could really help. Genetic disorders are serious business, and it's thought that knowing more about what happens in this black box period will help us understand why that can happen. You know, type 1 diabetes, Alzheimer's, cancers, they all have genetic components. And it would be nice to be able to keep an eye out for those as early as possible. And maybe you don't want kids or you aren't there yet in life. That's fine. Research into these embryos still affects you because of knowledge gaps. Learning things is like scientists' bread and butter. 2 things we have thanks to experimentation and science, by the way. So imagine if you knew a lot about this part of human life and this part, and absolutely nothing about this part. That's what these scientists want to understand. Are synthetic embryos one way we could get there? Yeah. Is it the best way? You know, I'm not an expert, but it seems like it could be a good path. Again, weird analogy. I think of it like removing the unethical meat industry from the equation. For some people, that's enough. For others, these are still weird. Synthetic embryos don't become people and probably can't, but they're still human cells. What do you think? More research is clearly needed here. But before we wrap, this channel is supported by you. So thank you so much for watching it. That said, you might be like me and you love supporting creators who make things that you enjoy. And you can do that by joining Nebula. Because when somebody joins Nebula with my code, that supports me. If you go and watch videos on Nebula, every creator you point your eyeballs at gets a little bit of support too. This makes sense because Nebula is a streaming service made by creators to support creators. That's why it's so simple. Joining gets you ad-free access to the creators that you love, the videos they make, the podcasts that they release, all ad-free. You also get originals, which only exist on Nebula, and you get Nebula First, which means stuff that comes out on Nebula before anywhere else, and even Nebula Plus, which I do almost every time, which is where there's extra content in the videos that I make. One of the originals that Nebula created is That Time When, from my friend Anita Sarkeesian. She wears amazing clothes in this show, and she digs into times when politics and pop culture collide. Like, remember the Super Bowl halftime show with the wardrobe malfunction? It happened when I was a kid, so I didn't really get it. I didn't know why people were so upset, but now I know, and it was super interesting. And that's just one of dozens and dozens of different originals from creators like Maggie Mae Fish or Abigail Thorne, Volksgeist and Polyphonic, and Lindsay Ellis and Real Life Lore and Wendover Productions, and so many different creators. If you want to join Nebula, and I really sincerely hope that you do, I'm on there. I really like watching stuff on there. There are monthly and annual memberships. Just use the link right here on the screen or down in the description. And you should know that every time you watch the videos that you were gonna watch anyway, that creator gets a little bit of support from you. And just as a tip, annual's the best deal, but you know your budget. And just thanks for considering it either way. And also thank you for watching Uno Dos of Trace. So let's go back and wrap this up. Maybe you noticed this video is a lot shorter than my videos have been lately, and honestly, it's a test. I want to be here explaining what's happening in the world of science, and I want to be here more regularly. I love making longer, more intricate videos, but I make notes on all these science stories in my phone, and it's just getting full of stuff, and I never get to talk about it. So here I am. I'm just a creator, standing in front of an audience, asking you to tell me what's up. Send me your feedback. And if you have a question about the world that you want me to make into a video just like this one, send it to me. I do that on my podcast every other week, so why not do it here too? There's a link in the description to submit a question. I want to be the guy you think of when Google or Wikipedia fail you. I can help. If you've ever thought that about anything, tell me about it. We can do this. Thank you so much for watching. Thanks to my patrons, thanks to my friends, and thanks to you. And as always, more research is needed.